Here we go. Tonight on Debate 13. Good evening, this is Force 13 Live and our first Debate 13 that we're doing live here, and it is actually, to be honest, only our second Debate 13 episode, but it's very nice to have you on board with us this evening. My name's Nathan Foy, as you know, and we'll be talking about a few subjects, some tropical related as we do on Force 13, and some not so tropical related items as well, because we like to expand out to the community at large, and we hope you will get involved with us this evening. I am joined, as soon as I get their audio up, I'm joined by the Discord team right now, or a select few people from our team who have decided they wanted to join in the discussion this evening. First of all, Daniel, are you there?
Yes.
Somewhere. Craig's there in the middle of your picture. Good evening. David, up there in the top right-hand side. How are you this evening? Over there somewhere?
I'm good.
And Dane is also with us tonight.
Doing fantastic, Nathan.
Doing fantastic. Well, as we saw at the beginning there, the first part of what we're going to discuss, pretty much to viewer demand actually, is about Hurricane Maria. No, not long ago, it was in the news, wasn't it, that Maria's death toll was speculated by some universities and agencies, or whoever it was, studies, that the death toll could have been several thousand and much higher than the government expectations. Let's begin on that with Craig, I suppose, because you were following Maria pretty closely as it was happening, as we all were, but I'll start with you. He's showing us this imagery here.
Yeah, so there's Hurricane Maria, or what was Hurricane Maria. This is her first landfall in Dominica as a Category 5 hurricane, and now starting to leave Dominica. This hurricane, there's no words that can probably describe it, the way the satellite and presentation was. Here you can see Maria with a very well-defined eye, good warm eye. Here the hurricane coming up to Puerto Rico, and then an eye wall replacement starts. Hurricane Maria's final peak was 175 miles per hour and 908 millibars, which is what, if I'm correct, would be one of the lowest pressures recorded in an Atlantic hurricane, if I'm correct. And then you can see Maria's made landfall in Puerto Rico at 155 miles per hour. So, a ferocious monster to make landfall on an island with pretty much nowhere really to escape from. And you can see the big eye of Maria, which is pretty much classic to what you would see as a hurricane making landfall on Puerto Rico, going over the mountainous terrain where, and north of Haiti and Dominica. You can see, Haiti as well, but never mind. You can see the inflow of Maria has been heavily disrupted over the mountains of Haiti. And you see the hurricane's completely lost the plot, and as it starts to move away from the Greater Antilles, as it starts to race northwards, at this point Lee Mark 1 is formed and probably getting ready to die out immediately and going into League 2. So that was pretty much Maria at, I would say, what you would see at her worst after her monstrous landfall in Puerto Rico. But the thing that really got me concerned was the fact that it was the power of the landfall. I mean, you look at this, I'm just going to go just after landfall. just after landfall, the first Category 5 land. You see how the eye, this is not long after, I'm going to go right to it, just before it. You see how the eye slightly clouds over, but you see just as it's making landfall, the eye cleared out, which sort of meant that, didn't matter what was going on over the island that Maria made landfall at, the inflow of Maria did slightly get disrupted as the eye did get bigger. I never thought I'd see the day that I would see two Atlantic Category 5s that would probably make history.
All right, Dane, what do you think? Maria, particularly in regard to its death toll in Puerto Rico.
I definitely think Maria did more damage in Puerto Rico than we are being, led on to. I think that's definitely the case, given how strong that it made landfall. 64 deaths just doesn't make sense as a number.
What do you think it is?
If I had to estimate, I would say several thousand.
Several thousand. Interesting. David, Daniel, your thoughts?
Okay. The New England Journal of Medicine
Yes.
did a survey of 3,300 households across the Puerto Rico. They wanted to produce an independent estimate of all-cause mortality after the hurricane. Respondents were asked about displacement, infrastructure loss, cause of death, and we calculated excess deaths by comparing our estimated post-hurricane mortality rate with official rates for the same period in 2016. And the report has indicated that the death toll is 70 times higher than the official estimate, and that was financially supported by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and others. So I would then support what Dane said, that it could be thousands, but it is a very contentious issue.
Well, it is, because how could something like this be the case? It would be higher than a lot of those other historic storms that struck many years past. You would have thought that the infrastructure would have been better by now, that the warning services and whatever else saves lives would have been there. Where has the problem come down? What has the problem come down to here? Why would the death toll be so high if it is indeed the case?
That's the thing that I'm scratching my head at. I have honestly not even the foggiest of how that could be the case. The only thing I could really at least bring would probably be a severe storm surge along the coast, but even that, I don't think I would. That storm surge would have to be at monstrous heights and monstrous strength to do that. But then again, we've got to take into consideration Puerto Rico is mountainous, so you've got to take into consideration that landslides are also a thing, along with the rainfall, flooding, storm surge, and then obviously, of course, on top of that, you've got the 155 mile per hour winds gusting well over Category 5 force. So my best bet of what could have caused this supposed 22,000 or plus or so deaths from whatever university was claimed as happened. I'm struggling to see how it would, though.
Now, I recall reading, I don't know if this is the same study, but I saw something about this, that the deaths were measured over a period of time after the storm, leading to speculation, and indeed that a lot of those numbers are indirect, but that some of them can be attributed to the storm and some of them to the storm's aftermath. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have to go back through all of the past storms to ascertain what their numbers are as well, if they're going to be counted in this way.
I mean, wow, what was the original death toll? 64.
Something like that.
I mean,
Yeah, it was 64.
If you're counting indirect deaths and direct deaths, and you've got an original death toll of 64, or a rough estimate of 64, then that means wherever they found this from has to be either at least a third or so indirect, or at least a full half is attributed to Maria's landfall and impact. But that would be virtually saying the fact that there was all forms of speculation. It was the same with what hurricane? Matthew. There was media saying that it was around, say, 50,000 dead and all that nonsense. And, I mean, the only way I could mainly say is that if this isn't true, which we're not praying it's not. We're praying this is not true at all. I would mainly just say is mainly wait and see what the true official sources say. Rather than jumping to conclusions, say, right, this is the final death toll, this is how much Maria or whatever future storm or whatever past storm killed. Because that's easily going to be put wrong if the death toll does not change by the official source. If that made any form of English at all sense.
And that well, this is the crux of the debate, really, about Maria and what it actually did on land. But obviously we titled it as a sort of critique, so I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to discuss with regards to Maria, his historical precedent, and other storms that compare to it, and maybe we can get some answers from those historical storms that did similar amounts of damage and destruction. How does it compare?
Wasn't it the strongest storm to make landfall on Puerto Rico since 1932? Something like that?
It's quite like, yes.
There's around about
any data on that, like, last storm that hit Puerto Rico that was of that similar magnitude?
They had a few in the first half of the 20th century, didn't they? Mainly early on. I think there were. They also got hit by one of the ones in 1928, didn't they? Or 26,
yeah, that was my.
One of the two.
Yeah, that's the one that I was thinking about, 1928.
Oh, there was one in the early 30s as well, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow.
It was a pretty bad spell for them. The Dominican Republic got hit by a Category 5 in 1930 as well. Obviously, that wasn't Puerto Rico, but it was pretty close. But this stuff isn't too uncommon, is it?
It's uncommon in the modern era, sure.
I don't know if Craig was talking to us, but he's muted at this point. I can't hear him at all. But what I'm getting at is, how can the number be so high? I don't get that part at all. Is it just a complete lack of preparation from locals? Or is it a complete lack of management from authorities during and after the storm? Or is it a larger social problem in Puerto Rico to do with the population? I've no idea. I still can't hear Craig, even though it sounds like he's having a very good conversation over there. I don't know what's going on. David, any more thoughts?
The Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, that's going to be directly attributed to a tropical cyclone if they're caused by forces related to the event, such as flying debris, or if they are caused by unsafe or unhealthy conditions resulting in injury, illness. So, and The onus is now on the Institute of Forensic Sciences over there to ensure that the death certificates are in order related to a tropical cyclone. The chronic conditions, delayed medical treatment. So I think the authorities over there have underestimated the death toll. And when you've got two independent studies lending support that it's, a couple of thousand is what has been
Yeah, we have Craig
but
back. I think so, anyway.
As I was going to say before,
Yep.
technology decided to be a complete piece of turd. The only thing I can think of the causes of this many deaths would either be, I would say, maybe disease, as David mentioned, after the storm, but
that would be indirect.
causing this many deaths. It would have to. I would mainly think that this would have to be down to the people not preparing at all, because you don't turn around and say, "Oh, there's only 64 dead," and then suddenly say, "Oh, it's 22,000 dead." I mean, what's sparked that? And that's the only thing I can think of is that people have either been unprepared, as you already stated, or it's a lack of management from the authorities in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Okay then, I just want to draw people's attention to, well, first of all, we're having serious problems here actually, because this event was supposed to have better technical assistance, but for some reason the technical side has completely failed us, unfortunately. I have no idea why. But we are also running a poll at the same time during this debate, which we've got the latest results for right now. Do you agree with non-tropical storm naming? So latest poll check, 47% agree, 34% neutral, 19% disagree. You can vote on that now on the community section of our channel page. This will only be open until the end of tonight's show. We'll keep checking up on that. I think we've just about covered Maria there, but finally, just one quick one. How strong do you really think it was, guys?
175. Can't argue with recon.
Okay, well that sounds like a wrap. Well, I guess we shall move on to that next issue, which seems to be a contentious one between the viewers. Quite an even spread, actually, somewhat. Obviously, a majority agreeing at the moment with it. And now let's see if any of you have differing opinions and can change any minds out there. So, it's been a recent thing, really, in the last 5 years or so, I suppose, maybe a little bit less than that, that various non-tropical storms have begun to be named by organisations. In some cases windstorms, in some cases winter storms, and I'm not sure elsewhere around the world whether there's some other conventions too. If there are any and you're in a different part of the world, do let us know. But let's begin with Dane on this. What are your thoughts on this procedure?
I would say it depends on like what it is. Like if it's something that can that can pose a serious risk to lives. So if it's something major, like how the UK Met Office or something like that names those extratropical cyclones, I think that's an example of it being reasonable. But if it's something that's not bad, not really a serious danger, for instance, I believe there's like this German station or something that like names high pressure systems.
The Open University of Berlin, the Free University of Berlin, rather.
That's taking it too far in my mind.
Well, they've been doing that for a very long time as well. They were probably the first to do these things, really, or one of. The problem I personally have with the Met Office naming storms, Dane, is that they don't have a set criteria for naming them.
when you name something, you should definitely have criteria for it, and if it's something that's like not a major problem, like as you mentioned, University of Berlin naming pressure systems, that is crossing the line in my mind.
Interesting. Craig?
It shouldn't be named at all.
Is that one of them?
Complete waste
Is
of
it?
time. You're pretty much now just naming clouds that hit the UK with wind. You're just naming them.
Well, I suppose that is a
This is an
windstorm.
image of Desmond that completely swamped Cumbria and ruined their Christmas and everything else. Before said Frank decided to come in and literally just crap on everything. But why name them? They're just like any other extratropical
So
cyclone.
that they can
having
put it on a
named high
hashtag,
pressure,
Craig.
For the love of God.
It's so that they can put it on a hashtag.
My thought on it is that
pointless. They're pointless to be named. They shouldn't be named.
well, do they
You might as
pose
well just
a
name every extratropical cyclone in the southern hemisphere.
This is where we really
If
run
you're gonna
into.
name
This is where we really run
high
into a
pressures
crossroads
like Berlin,
between.
Berlin do.
Sorry.
Name windstorms like the Met Office do. You might as well start naming thunderstorms. Crying out loud.
This is where we run into a crossroads between which matters more: science, in the case of actual criteria for naming storms and classifications, and whether this storm did that or not, or public awareness, in which you want to get a buzzword out, and in this case, the naming convention is the buzzword for the hashtag that they put on all of their updates.
Yeah, I think having that buzzword that helps that helps people remember it definitely helps raise
It's effectively a weird form of
awareness for something
natural
bad
branding, isn't it?
that could potentially cost lives. For example, tropical storms, hurricanes, those pose a danger to people's lives. And if we just called it Tropical Storm X, that wouldn't really help you much, because think about it, everything's going to be X. You're not going to remember, hey, Tropical Storm X is coming near me.
Yeah.
But if it's, say, Hurricane Isaac, you're going to be like, oh yeah, Hurricane Isaac is coming this way.
David, has there been any motion towards this procedure in Australia at all?
Actually, I'm leaning towards supporting storms being named, and we don't have it here in Australia, but it's something that should be considered, because it can be very valuable in data collection. It can be archived like we do with tropical cyclones, hurricanes. It's all archived, and we know that severe thunderstorm activity does cause massive amount of damage, tornadoes, property damage, flash flooding. So I'm going to lean towards supporting the naming.
Interesting. Daniel, do you have any opinions on this, being another UK resident? And you've probably been through one or two.
Yeah, not really, to be honest.
Well, where do we go from there? Do you assess any pros and cons that you'd like to add into the mix?
I'm not too sure, really. It's not really my area.
Not his forte.
No.
Have you ever been through any?
A storm?
Yes. One that was named by the Met Office, perhaps? Would you
Yeah,
agree with me that there needs to be a criteria for naming storms?
You mean restate? I don't really see the point, to be honest, naming them.
So he does have an
It's
opinion after all.
storms. They're not really that.
Nathan, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the position of the Met Office? Do they have a policy, or have
No,
they just somebody?
No, they just name anything.
They
that
name
spins.
storms whenever they feel like. They don't have any wind threshold. They don't have any. Well, they have their perceived threat, but it's pretty subjective, to be honest. You know, that there's really no criteria for it. That there's no area, as far as I know, there's no area of naming either. There's no perimeter.
No.
So it's just very odd to me. Force 13 used to do a bit of that as well, and its criteria was between. Well, it's been a while now. I think it was 45 and 67 degrees north and something west and east. But the wind had to be 40 miles per hour or more, gale force, and that probably should be the methodology really. But if not names, then what would it be? I suppose the only other thing you could use is numbers or nothing at all, like the olden days.
Well, I mean, if they haven't named them before, then what's the point?
Well, they never used to name hurricanes, did they?
Hurricanes have a valid reason to be named. Windstorms don't.
Well, they didn't think so in 1940.
So how long has the naming practice been in place? What, 12 months, 2 years?
Oh, well, it depends where you're talking about. The Met Office, didn't they start in
UK.
2014,
Met Office?
15, Craig, was it?
Yeah, around about there.
Something like that.
Completely pointless.
So basically, Craig and Nathan, it's a internal policy of the Met Office. I'm just wondering whether there's any UK government policy, whether there's any instrument allowing the Met Office to do it.
That's something we'll have to look into, but don't forget that the UK Met Office is part privatised now.
Privatised.
It is now.
Here's the latest poll check, and it hasn't changed very much after that little discussion. 46% agree with non-tropical storm naming. Well, not quite a majority. 32% neutral, and 22% disagree with the convention, which is quite a significant chunk there, Craig, agreeing with you.
Yeah, because you'd be virtually just naming everything that spins.
Pretty
Virtually.
much. Yes, now I must continue to apologise this evening for our graphics failures. We were supposed to have nice, cool little graphics, but we're just stuck with some of these bars that I'm editing myself. We did have it all primed and ready to go just before we began tonight's production. Well, I'm hoping it's pretty decent nonetheless. Let me just look in the chat right now, just in case there's anything interesting going on. Are people making hiccup jokes in there? Yes, it looks like they are. Well, don't tell Cesar. He's one of our members who hiccups all the time. Sometimes.
Looks like somebody already reached to do that, Nathan.
Pardon? Yes, they did.
Looks like you already got beat to that. Somebody did ask Cesar.
They asked for him specifically. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's available, if we could bring him in on this discussion, but I don't know. We didn't count him we didn't count on him appearing at the beginning of this evening. Craig's watching YouTube, which is very helpful, and now we move to
Oh, cheers.
our next. Oh, there's me.
There's me.
That's even more good. Not good at all.
Now it's just in infinite mirror because Craig is watching Nathan, and on Nathan's screen is Nathan,
Says
and
I was
on that
watching
screen
us.
is Nathan.
Says I was watching us. Okay, well,
It's a deception.
into our final topic, which was brought up by one or two of our members this evening about mobile phone use, and this could be a very interesting topic indeed. Sometimes we do venture out into the real world, and I think it was David who was looking at an article first. Tell us about it as you look away from the webcam. Lovely. David's got another computer screen that he's looking at over there.
The New South Wales state government over here in Australia is to undertake an inquiry into the possibility of banning smartphones on school grounds and replacing them with the old style mobile phone, which won't have a camera, known as a dumb phone policy. A
Dumb
study
phone.
into the yeah, that's not bad. Inverted commas too. Into the proposal was being led by a child psychologist after a review of smartphone use on school grounds across the state. They're still affording young people the opportunity to communicate with their parents, which I think is a legitimate role. So basically,
You can definitely
you're
see what
doing
they're
away
doing there.
with. That's right. So you're basically just having a device that doesn't have a camera, internet, and it will be the survey be conducted in schools from kindergarten to year 12. And here in Queensland, the state government has a policy, smartphones, but back in 2011, Nathan, it was reported that Queensland schools are at their wits' end over the misuse of mobile phones. And back in February this year, ABC National News reported, despite government calls for smartphones to be banned in classrooms, some experts say doing so would take education back. However, Channel 7 News here in Brisbane, just prior to us coming on live, they're running with a news story that parents have to take more responsibility for how a mobile telephone is used in the family unit. But I have a grandchild, and she takes her mobile phone to school, but she only uses it to communicate with home or me. So I think the review final report will show up some interesting material, but smartphones are being replaced with a normal phone. Well,
it's like we're going into a time warp. Daniel, what are your thoughts on this? Because you had opinions on this subject.
Well, I think that they should be able to take the phones into school, but they should be taken away and kept in a secure area. And that if anybody phones them, if they need to use the phones, if it's an emergency, if it's important, they should be allowed to use them. But I don't know really, because
well, that's what happens with some teachers.
Phone. Yeah, and it'd also reduce the risk of them being stolen or broken if they're kept in a secure environment. But I'd say it would reduce bullying, but that can also occur in the real world and not just on the phones.
Okay.
But I don't really know what kind of impact it would have on that, but I do think they should be handed in, not allowed to be used unless it's an emergency.
And now on to our two younger members. Let's begin with Craig. Any thoughts? Oh, he's muted again, I think.
Just up for words.
Sorry about that, Craig. I'm sure you'll get it back. Dane, what do you think?
My problem with Daniel's policy is that emergencies can arise, for one, in which a student needs to use their phone, for example, or they might have a change in plans that requires them to stay after school, so they would have to, in that case, leave class or get up to ask the teacher for their phone, rather than being able to just pull it out, do it real quickly, and
what do you think about what David's advocating? a ban on smartphones in return for so-called dumb phones.
I don't think there's anything.
I don't think that necessarily makes sense because for one, students don't really know how to use those. Two, and I don't think a ban is going to work on anything. A lot of people would probably try to circumvent it, myself.
Well, let's go back to step
Included.
one. Is it an issue, in your opinion?
Do I think it's an issue?
A distraction,
for some people,
a prevention, a barrier towards education. What do you think?
It depends on the context overall, but I would say that in certain situations it can become a problem, and if it is enough, and if the parent thinks it's a problem, they should take steps to address that issue. That's not the school's responsibility to monitor what a child is bringing to and using at school.
Mm-hmm. Craig, have we got you
Nathan.
back?
I hope so.
Yes. David, could that wait a moment?
Yeah, I want to hear what Craig says,
Craig.
and I want to respond.
Let's see if that works. But using smartphones, you can cheat on them using tests.
You're a little bit quiet over there, actually. Craig is really having issues with his technology at the minute. Where's your microphone? Holding it. It's holding it. Not good, not good. Craig is having real, irreconcilable problems in Craig's bedroom right now. I assumed it. Well, I don't know what to do about that, Craig. Should we try again? You've obviously, you've not long since left the schooling system. I'm assuming. I think that's the case. What was it like, and how would it have been an advantage or a disadvantage to have smartphones in the classroom?
As I'm gonna say, you use smartphones in a classroom having a test. You're gonna cheat on them, aren't you? It's cheating.
It's a very root one way of thinking there. Yes.
So technically,
I've never really cheated on a test with my phone for one, unless the teacher says you can, and I know
many teachers
many teachers strictly watch for that during tests. So I don't think phones are the biggest issue we should be talking about with tests. I think the biggest issue with tests is why do we have tests?
Well, that's going on to a whole different topic, although we do have some time available if you like. But, well, they're never going to allow mobile phones into test exams, are they?
No,
I
but
don't think they should be allowed in tests, definitely.
what I will generally say is that, well, prohibition of things overall doesn't really work.
But is there an argument to be made that if phones are valuable, and if it's another example of what young children are like quite often in the school playground and whatnot, always wanting to have the most attractive or expensive item, in this case phones. It could be anything, and could lead to social issues in the school.
Nathan, I'd just like to add to the situation over there in UK. Discussion paper was published by the London School of Economics, and the report of paper found on phones in school. in schools resulted in a 14.23% improvement in test scores for low achieving students and a 6.41% improvement overall in the schools that had introduced the ban. That benefit was equivalent to an additional hour of school a week, or increasing the school year by 5 days. And that was reported in the conversation. So there's an argument for, support for the ban. But I don't have any problems if the phone is used in a school yard out of class hours.
Right. Dane, any response?
What I'll say is that I think people could easily circumvent a phone ban for one, and I'm not someone who really believes in tests. Test scores don't really help you. That just help. Tests are basically just memorizing information short term. What you actually need from school is life skills.
Yep.
And you need to learn things like motivation. Basically, the goal should be to turn learning into a hobby to where they get the students curious and cause them to want to go more. Now for most of the honor roll students in today's society, that's not much of a problem. But
Well, Dane, that's a very
but for those who feel a little less,
yeah.
Who feel sports a little bit more boring and less.
Yep. I was just going to say it's a noble aim, but not everyone actually wants to be there, do they? And will never want to be there.
Yeah, if we look at it, I'm a huge advocate of the Nordic model, and that would include the education department in this case.
Okay then. Well, there we go. Daniel, any other input?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Okay then. Well, the latest polling, another poll check here. Do we agree with non-tropical storm naming? 50% agree now, 30% neutral, and 20% disagree. Just to remind ourselves, Daniel, you disagree?
Yeah.
Craig disagrees. David, I think he was supporting it in the end, weren't you?
I support a ban.
No, we're moving on.
Sorry.
Just asking you about the tropical storm, non-tropical storm naming once more. You were supporting it in the end, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm supporting it.
And Dane, I didn't quite get your affiliation.
On the actual poll, which I did vote on, by the way, I voted agree on the poll.
Interesting.
That was where I went.
Well, there we are. Well, we have around... Well, there's just over 10 minutes on that poll before it closes. There's already been 100 votes, which is quite interesting. 50%, which is a number 50, agree. So there isn't too much else to discuss for the last 10 to 15 minutes, although I'm not sure if Craig may have a topic or two that he may want to divulge.
What's that? VAR?
I don't know if you want to. If you want to, if it might excite some conversation.
Just a heads up. If this gets boring, it's not my fault.
I will put a little title underneath you saying Craig Rambles.
There you
fair?
go, Nathan. There you go.
I would do a rude gesture at this point, but I'm not going to do it.
No, that would be very Michael-ish of you. Ready? Here comes the subtitle, and you're up.
Yes. So, in the World Cup, if you've been paying attention to it, or anyone who's been watching it, you would have noticed this thing called VAR, called Video Assistant Ref.
Yes.
Supposed to eliminate, quote, eliminate all forms of controversy.
We are really struggling to hear you, unfortunately.
I should eat my mic, I really should.
You should literally be... It should be in your mouth in order for us to hear you.
I'm not going to
Oh no, that is
afraid
honestly kind of gross to think about, Nathan.
I'm afraid
That is
that's the
kinda gross
case.
to think about.
I'm not going to do that. No, but
That's close enough, I think.
supposed to help eradicate issues that the referee misses. That's not been the case. There have been multiple cases where decisions have been harsh for mainly penalties. Australia's not good at that.
Oh yes. Well, let me just maybe get an opinion of one or two here. First of all, Dane, I know that you've also, well, I think you have been watching the World Cup so far, and
I've kind of been semi-following, kinda.
Semi-following. Well, you followed it enough to make a whole massive chart on who you think's going to win
To
every
make
game.
a bracket, yeah.
Yeah.
And who do you think's going to win the tournament?
I took Belgium over Argentina, though that's probably going to end terribly.
Interesting. Having said that, they didn't play too badly, did they? Belgium, rather than Argentina, who lost
Yeah, I was
today,
gonna say,
believe
if
it
you
or not.
think
Oh,
Massively. Shocking.
Yeah.
But Craig was talking about the, this is going completely well off course, but we have a few minutes to
but
spare.
yeah,
The
was
VAR,
supposed to
the
eradicate-
virtual assistant referee.
Yeah, but the VAR was supposed to eradicate all forms of controversy or incidents that the referee or linesman's miss. But as of the recent few games, that's not really been the case. There's been a couple of where controversy has spiked. Australia has mainly been the centre of that. Yes, I should know because I've sadly watched all the games.
what I'll say is that I'm practically done with seeing refs make bad calls over and over and over. At this point, I'm a supporter of fining referees for bad calls,
Fining.
using video evidence to prove that the call that they made on the play was incorrect.
Well, I'm going to say this. There was a penalty given today in Australia-Denmark, which ended 1-1. Australia got a penalty that you could say is about 50-50. Australia had a corner. They swing the ball in. Both players are going up to header it, but the Danish player sticks an arm out. But that's him jumping to get leverage, as you do when you jump. So the ball gets headed at his hand. The referee
Does
gets
it look
called to check.
intentional?
It's not deliberate. No, it's not deliberate. But the referee
Well,
gets
if it's
told
not-
to check it by VAR, and he gives a penalty for it.
I suppose I shouldn't ask David whether he supports it then, because he'll say yes.
Well, we've
Well,
had video umpire for probably a decade over here in Australia, so I don't have any issue with the video recorder being available.
Craig, I'm struggling to get your viewpoint here. Are you against it coming into regular games?
It's turning football into more rugby. I was against it at first, because it was doing that. But as long as it works, I don't care. As long as it works. It's the same with goal line technology. I was on board with that because that would work.
Yeah.
VAR still needs some fine tuning. At the minute, I'm not really with it.
Is it better
because the
than
controversy they've
nothing?
given.
Is it better than not having it? I guess the main
It's better
question.
Way better. Because
Way
at least
better.
you get missed things that are clear, and the referee gets told to check them, and he can give them. So that's where there is plus sides to it. There are plus sides, don't get me wrong, but there are downsides.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's. After that wonderful discussion,
Of nonsense.
Craig's rambling. How do you think England will do, by the way?
I did.
Did win their
in
first
my
game. That was the biggest shock of
quote-unquote-
the tournament, by the way.
In my quote unquote bracket, I had England third in a group with Tunisia
Tunisia.
advancing out of that group and defeating Colombia.
And how well do you think Colombia is going to do?
I don't see
I
Don't
had
tell
Colombia
Marcel.
as top of Group H, but
That's not going to
Probably
happen.
failure.
That's not going to happen.
And in Group G, I had Belgium first, Tunisia second,
Okay.
England
Being
third, and
optimistic.
Panama fourth.
Dane is being optimistic here, and I like it.
Interesting. Well, the polling is getting interesting as well because it's getting even more stacked one way. Earlier on, we were sort of talking about 45% agree. It's now to 55%, Craig. Ah, the outnumbering is beginning. 27% are neutral and 18% disagree. That vote closes in just over 5 minutes. You can find that on our community tab on the Force 13 YouTube channel. We have some comments on that as well, which I'll read out here. David Foster says, I'd say yes, because if the storms being named happen enough and pose a threat to lives and property, then they should be named to make precautionary measures sound more meaningful. For example, which sounds worse, Winter Storm 14 or Severe Winter Storm Michelle?
Both sound terrible.
Games Division says they're neutral / not sure, as long as there is a reasonable threat to life and or property and there is a set criteria for a system to be named, which is not what the Met Office and the Weather Channel are doing. And I would agree with that, personally. There needs to be a criteria for it.
Or at least.
Let's see, we have a few more. Disagree, because no, they disagree because they come and they go, plus it would sound a bit weird, and because hurricanes and tropical storms last a while. Insinuating that winter storms and windstorms don't, which is true. Adam
I'm right
Smith
with that.
also disagrees. Naming smaller, less deadly systems makes anything with a name now seem less threatening than it actually is, and can actually lead to more people dying.
Maybe that's a bit OTT, but
Slightly.
I get the point.
Yep, okay. Cooper Sweeney says, naming of non-tropical systems gives the general public a better perspective of the threat posed by the system. However, it can also make classification confusing, as it may be difficult to distinguish one low from another, especially during a merger or interaction of two systems. And Jarvis official says, makes them easy to remember. They agree with the policy. That is, again, that argument that we were having earlier, where science meets publicity. Which is more important, getting the information out there or making sure it is correct to the letter, or getting less good information out that could help people make a life and death decision anyway?
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
One, a storm is coming, okay. You know, I guess people don't need to know the full specifics, although some people would be encouraged more to evacuate, for instance, if they knew how strong the storm was, although that may not be the wisest course of action either, because
No.
even weaker storms can cause serious issues.
I mean, naming windstorms is. You might as well just start naming thunderstorms at this point, because you're just naming things that are short-lived.
Well, again,
Windstorms
I go back to what I
form
say.
every day.
There should be a criteria. It should be gale force. Do you think criteria for naming extratropical storms should be that they have a centre?
Perhaps we should name them down here in the southern
We
hemisphere.
just have a center that's attached to a front.
I mean, yeah, but in a way, as I was saying, Met Office just name everything. I mean, there's been multiple windstorms that have had no centers.
Oh, and I missed Norway Tracking's comment. My apologies. He also agrees, works okay. I think it helps show how many there have been.
Or just ignore like the umpteen thousand that have been gone prior, unnamed.
Yes, indeed. Well, there we are.
But the thing is, if you're going to name windstorms, give them something that's going to make you terrified. Not this wimpy names of Frank and Desmond, for God's sake.
So you want like hurricanes? So you want like windstorm saber-toothed tiger?
That's just stupid.
Well, that is intimidating, right? That fits your point.
No, something with a name like with authority, not but not an item. Good God.
So Windstorm Thor.
I mean, yeah. That's better. That's inventive.
Windstorm Jesus.
Jesus Christ.
No. Too easy, Craig.
Exactly. But, I mean, Desmond, Windstorm Desmond, Windstorm Kate, Windstorm Jake. What's the point?
Craig, looking at those that you just those names, how bad were they?
Well, Desmond was just a rainmaker. That's all he was. Ruined Columbia.
Colombia. Really?
Clever on your mind.
I've been thinking about the Japan score. But the only threat was for Cumbria was that he ruined Cumbria with his flooding. Then comes Windstorm Frank, which was just a glory kill, really, if you think about it, for Desmond. Because he just added to Desmond's damage. But to be honest, if you're going to name windstorms, at least for the love of God, do it right. Start with A and go from there, and at least have a sense of order.
Yes, we can tell you're very miffed by this, Craig.
Actually,
That's virtually true. If you're going to name windstorms, do them right.
Interesting point. Well, the poll closed, by the way. The final result was 55% agree, 28% neutral, and 17% disagreed. 122 votes on that. So, yeah, most people aren't on your side, Craig. And I think many people would agree that, I'd like to think, if the question was rephrased to, if there was a set criteria, would you support it? And I'd vote yes, and I think a lot of other people would as well.
I mean, it's like saying, that's like naming just thunderstorms now. I mean, I'm surprised the Met Office haven't done that.
But it's not really, is it? There are many more thunderstorms. They're much smaller scale systems than large extratropical cyclones.
Yeah, but windstorms don't last that long either.
Oh yeah, I do agree that, you know, Met Office are naming fronts, aren't they? Weather fronts, but they should, you know, naming extratropical cyclones, I think, is fair.
But that's like asking if Colin had a centre, which he didn't.
Yes, that's an argument for another day.
We should actually do that for the next debate 13. What's Colin tropical?
Oh no.
Well, that is the end of the show, believe it or not. How have we managed that? Well, we have another Debate 13 programme. Okay, that's not working. Lovely. I'll have to just turn that off. We have another Debate 13 programme coming up next Thursday evening. We thank you for persevering with us this evening, because the technology has been pretty atrocious, actually. We were hoping it was going to be much better presentation-wise than it actually was. But we hope that our scintillating chat did something to aid, something to amend that possible quibble. As we're about to end the show here, if you've got any more topics that you'd like to suggest to us in between now and next week, do send them in through any of our outlets. We'll pick them up. Now, of course, you can contact Force 13 on any of our outlets. Of course, we're here on YouTube. We're on Facebook, search Force 13 all in text. Same on Twitter at our handle. And you can also add Fool 13 on Skype and my personal account on Discord. FOOL, what am I doing? Fool13 #9094, and on Skype that is my first personal account, but also the Force 13 account on there officially too. Well, it's been a pleasure having you this evening, guys, and I'm sure we'll be back again next week. We'll see what the topics are. We never decide until the last minute because we like to be as current as possible. There really wasn't much happening in the world of news today. But there we go. Till next time.
Besides Trump's executive order, if we wanted to count that.
What's he done this time? Well, we can cover.
I believe.
Should we cover Trump next week? People
Yeah,
say
sure.
no. People say no. Okay. Well, that's all for now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Good night.